quenching. Okay. So what causes galaxies to stop forming stars? So observations and simulations have shown clearly that in the local universe, there are two kind of factors which affect the quenching of galaxies, namely the mass of the galaxy and the environment of the galaxy. So for example, here I show the famous study by Peng et al., which used the SGSS and Z Cosmos data. And in the color is the fraction of quiescent galaxies. So red means a high fraction of quiescent galaxies and blue means a high fraction of star-forming galaxies. And so from this plot, where x-axis is the mass and y-axis is the environment density, we can see that quiescent galaxies tend to occur at highly dense environment and with more masses. While vice versa is also true that star-forming galaxies tend to occur in less dense environments and tend to have low mass. And I'm showing here another result which goes as far back as 1980 by Dressler et al. And they measured the morphology of galaxies which were in clusters and fields, etc. And they found that there is an enhancement in the fraction of elliptical galaxies in clusters and centers of clusters, while spirals tend to be in fields and outskirts of clusters. So like this, the morphology, star formation rate, and many other factors of galaxies are related to their environment and mass. And in the local universe, we specifically see that all the quiescent galaxies are usually found in centers of clusters. This is because environmental processes quickly quench the galaxies as compared to the galaxies which are not in highly dense environment. So why mass and environment affect the quenching of galaxies? So here is another plot by Peng et al., in which they marginalized mass and environment respectively in the upper and lower plot. And they showed that mass quenching efficiency, that is the quench fraction of galaxies, increases both with mass and environment, even if we study only one of those individual effects. So these both are individual effects that affect the galaxies separately. And that is because there are various processes, some of them related to mass, while others related to environment, that affect the quenching. So here in red, I show the mass of the mass related processes, and in blue, I show the environmental processes. So in mass processes are the well-known like AGN feedback, stellar feedback, morphological quenching, and the environmental related processes which happen more likely in clusters are like strangulation, harassment, ram pressure, stripping. And there I also show the quenching time scale. That is the time scale it takes to quench these galaxies. And these are derived using simulations that are calibrated for low redshift conditions. However, they are a good diagnostic tool to understand what actually quenched the galaxy, because if we can reconstruct the star formation history of the galaxies, then we can kind of get how much time it took to quench, and that can be used as a diagnostic tool to understand what was the dominant quenching process for the galaxy. But when using this quenching time scale, we must remember that this is calibrated to low redshift conditions. However, now with the advent of JWST in the last 2 or 3 years, and also some studies with KEK-VLT and even ALMA, have found spectroscopically quiescent galaxies, and especially massive quiescent galaxies at redshift greater than 3. So at redshift 3, the universe is only 2 billion years old. So greater than 3 means less than 2 billion old. And these galaxies have been found to be highly compact red bulges with very strong Balmer breaks, which are indicative of old stellar populations. So now the question arises that what quenched these galaxies so early when the universe was only 2 billion years old? And since, as I said, they are also very massive with stellar masses of the range greater than 10 to the power 10 solar masses, how did the stellar growth happen so fast? So while in the literature, there have been some studies by JWST about the relation of mass and AGN feedback in the role of quenching, there is a gap about the environmental effect on high redshift galaxies. And so that is what my work is about. And here I show the various studies that have been done by JWST and also pre-JWST that found the number density of the quiescent galaxy. And so if, I don't know if you can see my, yeah, you can see my arrow. So the Carnell et al. And the Valentino et al., this work are the only 2 JWST studies. The rest are non-JWST studies. So they have kind of increased the number density of the quiescent galaxies. But with Spitzer also previously people found them. So now coming back to the question, what quenches galaxies? So we don't really know till now. This is one of the most kind of hot question in the extragalactic astrophysics, but we have a few theories. So firstly, many simulations such as the lustrous TNG simulation and the magneticum simulation has suggested that different kind of AGM feedback in different environments is quenching them. And another proposal is by some observations such as Carnell et al., who proposed that these galaxies are very massive and they rapidly formed stars and overconsumed their gas, and then they could not be rejuvenated, and so rapid consumption of gas. And finally, the third is environmental related processes, because there have been a few studies which have found quiescent galaxies in highly dense structures at redshift above 3. So to explain this point even further, I want to explain this figure here. So here in this figure on the y-axis is the deviation from the mean density of the field. So mean density is like what is the average kind of environment. And so a negative deviation from that means an underdense environment, and a positive deviation from that means an overdense environment. And in blue are the quiescent galaxies and red are the star-forming galaxies. So this is from the magneticum simulation, and they found that quiescent galaxies should be found in underdense environment, while star-forming galaxy should be found in overdense environment, which is essentially a reversal of the relation which we see in the local universe. However, there's no observational study till date which actually statistically did this same analysis. This is done using simulation, and that is which is needed. So that is something which I did, and I'll talk about further. So, but how do we understand the environment of galaxies at redshift greater than 3? Because in the local universe, clusters exist, but clusters don't exist in the early universe. They haven't virialized yet. So the nature provides an ideal laboratory to understand the environmental effects in the early universe, called protoclusters, which are basically the progenitors of present-day clusters. So they are highly dense and highly extended structures in the early universe that are supposed to virialize and form clusters. And since they are very rare and they are also very extended, in order to discover the protoclusters, there is a need for wide area surveys, such as the survey which is in Cosmos. So, for example, here is a figure which discovered a protocluster in 3D with the help of spectroscopic redshift, which was done by me and our collaborators. And we found a protocluster. So such kind of structures, if we study and we try to understand what is happening in the galaxies in them, we can try to understand what is the effect of environment. But what can we use as the tracer of protoclusters? So first is there are spectroscopic surveys, that's the obvious answer, but at high redshift that can be very, very expensive because the galaxies are of the order of magnitude like 24, 25. And then is the photometric surveys. Those are a good first way to find it, and then we can follow up with spectroscopy. But again, the photometric uncertainties can be large. Then there are sub-millimeter galaxies using, for example, ALMA, which are supposed to trace the large-scale structure, but there are questions on it if they really trace the large-scale structure or not. And finally are the Lyman alpha emitters, which are emission line galaxies that can be easily observed from the ground and whose redshift can also be constrained. So clustering measurements have shown that they are among the best tracers of the large-scale structure of the early universe, and they are increasingly being used to find protoclusters. So that is also something which I used in my study. So now this is all with the introduction of what I did. Now I will talk about what I actually did. Sorry. So my first project, it was related to doing the first statistical analysis of quiescent galaxies at cosmic noon. Cosmic noon is the time when the star formation rate of the universe was at peak. And uh, to do the first statistical analysis to understand how the environment relates to the quiescent galaxy. So for this, I found a large sample of quiescent galaxies at redshift 3.1. Why 3.1? I will explain further in the cosmos field. Because cosmos field is the most studied field in extragalactic astronomy. So there's a lot of data available in that. And I created density maps in order to measure the density. And I tried to find the statistical relation between quenching and environment at high redshift. So the data I used, first of all, was from the Cosmos or Cosmic Evolution Survey, which has data ranging from optical in the HSC bands to HST data to Spitzer data. So it has a wide multi-wavelength coverage, and also a lot of spectroscopic redshift are available for it. It is also very deep data. As you can see the mass limit on the screen for star-forming galaxies and quiescent galaxy, it's quite deep, going as low as the stellar mass of 10 to the power 9. And the second data which I used was from our own collaboration, which I also observed in Chile, was 100-square-degree DECam Imaging in Narrowband survey or ODIN survey. Basically, this is a photometric survey which has also 3 narrowbands that are shown in the figure. And I used the N501 band, which is centered at the location where the Lyman alpha line is supposed to be at redshift 3.1. So with the help of this narrow band, we can select with a lot of confidence the Lyman alpha emitters. And we also had a collaboration with the DESI survey. And so we were able to confirm that 98% of our photometrically selected LEs also had the correct redshift. So I used Lyman alpha emitters from this survey. So how did I find the quiescent galaxies? I found them using SED fitting. SED fitting, if you don't already know, is a process of fitting the spectra and the photometry of a galaxy with stellar population synthesis models. And that predicts the star formation history and other properties of the galaxy. So for this purpose, I use the code Bagpipes, which is specifically designed for JWST and high redshift studies. And I use a star formation history model of double power law. So the reason I use this one as opposed to like the classical models like exponentially declining, etc., was because firstly, it's non-parametric, kind of, almost non-parametric. Some may call it semi-parametric, and so it doesn't affect so much our results. And secondly, many simulations such as SIMBA simulation have already shown that it is able to predict the most precise result for high redshift quiescent galaxies. For example, the exponentially declining power law underpredicts the mass of these galaxies. So I'm showing here an example of the SED fitting I did. So orange is the best fit model and blue is the points. And you can see very clearly that's a very strong Lymanbreak present here, which is a very telltale sign of like post-starburst kind of galaxy, and also very commonly seen in high redshift quiescent galaxies. It's a very good fit. So the output, like I said, for my purposes, the most important outputs are 3: star formation history, stellar mass, and the quenching time scale. So here is an example of the star formation history which I found. And in red, I also show the peak, where the peak of star formation happened for this galaxy, allegedly according to my model. And in blue, I show where the galaxy quenched. So this way, the difference between red and blue can give us the quenching time scale also. And this shows a very typical kind of star formation history, which I got for all my quiescent galaxies. And that was that they reach their peak, that is also predicted as a rapid consumption of gas. And then they decline very, very rapidly of the order of 100 to 400 mega year only. So they are getting quenched at a very, very rapid scale. And this I found, so I was able to find 25 quiescent galaxy totally in the 2-square-degree cosmos field. And this was common for almost all of my galaxies, this kind of star formation.
Do you need to include, let's say, stellar templates, for example,
Yeah.
mass and age of the star population of stars?
Yeah, so the templates the templates I included were the Brussels and Charlotte template, but the updated ones, not the old ones. So using the Miles spectral library, there is a new 2016 updated ones. Those I updated, and the nebular lines are taken into account using Cloudy. And for the dust model, I didn't use the Calzati model. I used another one called Salim et al., which allows us to vary the dust model itself, so that we're not assuming, because the Calzati is based on studies of the local universe and the Milky Way, etc. So all these are kept as free parameters.
And you correct the reddening also for the reddening also?
So yeah, the dust model takes that into account. So because a lot of this data, especially the important part of the data, the Lymanbreak, is from the space telescope. We don't really have so much, like, I don't know if you mean like the effect of atmosphere or...
No. Galactic.
Yeah. So all those things have already been taken into account, because I was not really in this survey, not really involved in the first pre-processing step of the data. I received the photometry from ODIN and Cosmos.
Okay.
And then, so they did those steps of correcting for the red link for the Milky Way galaxy and correcting for all the other things which need to be corrected.
Okay.
So the next thing which was important to do was to characterize the environment. So I did this using Voronoi tessellation. So I don't really want to go into the gory details of this, but to be brief about it, each galaxy has a cell around it, and the cell is composed of the area which is closest to the galaxy. So if we are in a crowded area, the cells would be smaller because each galaxy will have like all the points which is closer to each other. And if we are in a less crowded region, the cells would be larger. So the density is inversely proportional to the area. And that way I was able to, using this Voronoi tessellation map, I was able to make a density map, which I show here. And here I also show the quiescent galaxies which are detected. And in background is the density map. So I'll talk about it more later. So my first result was the number density of the galaxy. So my number density was of the order of 10 to the power minus 5 co-moving megaparsec cube, which is the same that has been observed using FEARS, which is a famous DWSC survey. And so that was reassuring that my galaxies, all of which had masses greater than 10 to the power 10.6 solar masses, had this number density. And so I compared this with other massive quiescent galaxies. So at least my sample is complete. Now, the second thing is the density map. So I'm showing the density map, which I made using Cosmos 2020 and ODIN LAE. So the difference is the Cosmos 2020 consists of all kind of galaxies, star-forming galaxies, Lymanbreak galaxies, quiescent galaxies, whatever kind of galaxy you can think of, because it's a very deep map without any like selection effect. I just select the galaxies using a redshift chart. But the LAEs map only is only made of LAEs. And LAEs are basically low mass star-forming galaxies, which are dust-free. So as you can see, there are differences in the map. And in the map, in black and white is shown the density. In yellow are shown the protoclusters that I discovered, and yellow points show the quiescent galaxies. So as you can see, for example, the protocluster A is discovered in both, and it has also been now independently discovered by a third study. So this is a confirmed protocluster, so this is reassuring. And B and C and D are not coinciding in both the maps. So there can be two reasons for that. The first reason is that LAEs are very strongly photometrically detected. So they have a very small uncertainty in their photometric redshift. On the other hand, the Cosmos 2020 galaxies, even though they have good redshift, but they are photometric. So instead of like 3.1, that C overdensity, for example, could be at 3.2. So that would be missed by the LEs because the LEs uncertainty is of the order of 0.06, and it is also very precise. It's not just accurate, but it's also very precise. And so one reason is the variation in the photometric uncertainty. And the other reason is fairly obvious, is that LEs may be tracing less evolved younger overdensities, while other kind of galaxies such as dusty star-forming galaxies might be tracing those galaxies where LEs may not be fully abundant. So this was one of my results, that the LEs are may not be able to trace all kind of large scale structures. So in order to really confirm this result, we need to do a spectroscopic follow-up of this. Now coming back to the quiescent galaxies, which was the main motive of this paper. So firstly, I tried to understand what is the relation of duration of quenching with the stellar mass and the star formation rate peak at the stellar mass. So the duration of quenching and stellar mass, we don't really see any kind of correlation. We see that almost all of our galaxies, first of all, they are quenched at time scale less than 400 mega year, and many of them are quenched between 200 to 400 mega year. But there's no correlation with the stellar mass. This is very much opposed to what we see in the local universe, where the more massive galaxies quench at much rapid rate. But here, even though the mass is one order of magnitude, we don't really see any difference. We do see that there is a slight trend because of the huge uncertainties. We cannot be sure of it between star formation rate and the stellar mass. However, this is kind of expected that the more massive galaxies will definitely have a higher specific star formation rate and a higher star formation rate at their peak. So the next thing I did was the same analysis with the density, because apart from mass, the other important criteria to understand quenching is the environment. And again, I do not see any correlation between the density and the duration of quenching. And here I show both the density with the Cosmos field and the LEs. And it's reassuring to see that using two independent tracers, I get the same result, which is that no correlation between the duration of quenching and the density. So next, I measured the quench fraction. Similarly, as I showed in the first or second slide, what Peng et al. Had done, the quench fraction across density. And taking into account the uncertainties and doing some Monte Carlo simulation to create an uncertainty also in the Spearman coefficient, I found that there is no observable, at least with the current data set of 25 galaxies, there is no correlation between quench fraction and density. Finally, I also ran a code, which is a filament finder code on my density maps in order to look for cosmic filaments. Cosmic filaments are basically elongated structures in the cosmic web that connect clusters or protoclusters. And I tried to find if there is a relation between filaments and quiescent galaxies, because in the local universe, we do see that there is a quiescent galaxies tend to occur more in filaments. But when I compared the quiescent galaxies with the similarly massive star-forming galaxies, at least the Anderson-Darling test is not able to predict that there is a clear difference between the two distribution, even though with the eye, it seems to be that quiescent galaxies are closer to the filaments. But perhaps that is because within uncertainties, the distribution seems same. So this for this, we probably need a larger sample. However, this study was able to conclude the main result of this study was that we did not find any relation with the environment, whether it is quench fraction, whether it is the quenching time scale, or the mass, or relation with filaments, or relation with protocluster centers. We were not able to find any correlation. So the conclusion of our study, which is the first study ever of high redshift quiescent galaxies environment, was that quiescent galaxies and environments are not related in the same way as they are in the local universe, that quiescent galaxies are not found at an overabundance in highly dense environment or in a low dense environment. That does not mean that the quiescent galaxies which are actually in protoclusters are not being affected by the environment. They probably are, but the environment is not a strong factor in the same way as it is in the local universe, that it will create an overabundance in the highly dense environment or vice versa. It's not true. So what we found for the first time was that the star formation rate density relation in the local universe, which is valid, is not true at the high redshift. However, our study, even though it is a complete mass sample and it was still now the biggest statistical study done in quiescent galaxies, it still lacked a very important thing, and that was spectroscopic redshift. And in order to understand the spectroscopic, so that was the result of my first paper. But in order to understand the spectroscopic redshift of these faint galaxies, we need NIRSPEC data. There's really no way around it. Even with KEC and VLP, we're not able to confirm these galaxies. So the next thing which I did was I used the data from the survey JADES, which is a very famous JWST survey. So I used NIRSPEC and NIRCam data in order to spectroscopically confirm not only quiescent galaxies, but also their environment. So this survey is in the Goods South and Goods North field. And those are also very famous extragalactic field. And I performed the similar analysis in the JADE survey in order to see if I'm getting the same result or if spectroscopic redshifts are creating a problem in that. So this is the JADES footprint, and in JADES there are photometric as well as spectroscopic redshift, which align very, very clearly. As you can see, the photometric and spectroscopic have very good agreement with them. And actually, most of my redshift were spectroscopic anyways, and all of my quiescent galaxies are now spectroscopically confirmed. So since NIRSPEC only covers a very small area of Good South, and quiescent galaxies are very rare, they have number density of 10 to the power minus 5. I was only able to discover 6 quiescent galaxies in the Good South field, which is this field, which is not even the whole Good South field, but the only part which is covered by JADES. And I used again the SED fitting, but this time using both photometry and spectra to constrain the physical properties of the quiescent galaxies and to discover them. And I used the same density map technique which I used. And this time I used another algorithm to discover filaments. which is a machine learning based algorithm that is being developed by my collaborators and I to discover the filaments. And this is basically the methodology of it to do the similar kind of analysis. Yes. Um, so the depth here implies, so I'm not very sure about it because I haven't read the paper recently, but I think this depth implies the limiting magnitude. I think so because it's a very deep JWST survey. So also, the part of the jades which I'm using is called jades deep. So in jades, there is jades deep, medium, and jades parallel. So I think the deep part has this very high limiting magnitude. So that's why it's really high. But this is very usual in KWST deep surveys because they are designed, especially the jades. The one of the main purpose of jades is to understand galaxies. Not only, so this study is at redshift 3 to 5, but jades, one of the main purpose of jades was to study galaxies above redshift 7. And some of the galaxies which they have discovered are also at 14. So they designed it specifically to be very deep. So coming to my results, so first is the similar plot I made with the quenching time scale with density and with stellar mass. So I have divided here the quenching time scale in 3 groups because just to use it as a diagnostic tool. So group 1 are the very short quenching time scales, which are processes like stellar feedback and ram pressure stripping. Group 2 are a slightly longer time scale that can be, for example, morphological quenching or interactions can cause it. And group 3 is a longer time scale, which can be gravitational interactions between galaxies and AGN feedback, for example. So if we take into account both the cosmos galaxies and the Jades galaxy, we see that there is no correlation between quenching time scale and the density. But only looking at the Jades galaxy, which is a very small sample, we can kind of see that the galaxies which are at a higher density are in a different group than the galaxies which are at a lower density. But since the sample is so low, we hold that the results from a previous study are still true because looking at the overall map, when I calculated the Spearman coefficient, I did not find the correlation between them, or even if I'm just looking at the Jades galaxy, because there are some outliers. As you can see that in group 3, there is a galaxy which has a very long quenching time scale of the order of 1 gigayear. So we were able to confirm the results of our previous study with this spectroscopic study also. Another thing which I looked was the stellar mass with density and the stellar age of the stellar population with the density. So this is an interesting result because I found that the stellar mass of the quiescent galaxy increases with density. And this is not observed in star-forming galaxies, which are shown in the background with the blue color. But this is particularly seen in the quiescent galaxy. So this could indicate that quiescent galaxies could be nodes of like local overdense node which consume their neighbors and form stars very quickly. And so that is why with higher density, the increase in mass. This could indicate that. And then looking at the stellar age of the quiescent galaxies tend to be higher than the star-forming galaxies, which is something that is to be expected because star-forming galaxies are just now forming stars, while quiescent galaxies have already old stars. That is how they are selected by their Balmer brain. So now one by one, I want to go at each galaxy which I selected in this study. So first, I will talk about the highly dense galaxies. So this is our first galaxy indicated QG6620.
So just to interrupt you. So this star formation rate is coming directly from the acidity, right?
Yeah.
And do you have any of them covering the H alpha from which you can also try to calculate the
Yes.
star formation rate?
Yes. Some of these galaxies have H alpha lines, not all of them. But so firstly, they are quiescent galaxies, so not all of them have H alpha line like at all. The ones which have, they have been proven to be AGN. So
Yeah.
we did like study with the BPT diagram, and also because this is the good south field, they are also observed by VLA, for example. So they have been confirmed by other studies such as radio to be AGN. So those H alpha, according to at least this study and also one other study called Baker et al., is arising from the AGN and not from the.
So you have excluded those objects
No,
for
no,
which you got.
they are included.
Okay.
So some of these galaxies have AGN. So I forgot to mention this, but all the galaxies which have like a green circle behind them, they have the AGN.
Okay.
So because this is one of the important thing which we cannot exclude, because if the environment is not affecting the galaxies, it could be that the AGN is affecting. And even if it is affecting, we want to see a joint effect of AGN and environment, because the simulations predict, like even the simulations are in contradiction with each other, such as the magneticum simulation predicts that AGN plus underdense environment, and illustrious TNG predicts AGN plus overdense environment. So we also wanted to keep into mind that where are the AGN galaxies lying and where are the non-AGN galaxies lying.
So how they're questioned galaxies if they are hosting an AGN? I mean,
so the
what?
question connects is because, so if the galaxy is quenched by AGN feedback, for example,
Okay.
like all the gas of it is spelled out, and if it is in an overdense environment, it will be able to rejuvenate itself by accreting more gas. So it will
Yeah.
not appear quiescent to us, or there will not be that much number density of quiescent galaxies, because that will be very short kind of pointing, if you will even call it that. On the other hand, if AGN are occurring itself in an overdense environment because there's so much gas around.
So they are quenched galaxies, not quiescent galaxies.
Quenched and quiescent are the same thing.
Okay. So how a quiescent galaxy hosts an AGN? That's difficult.
No, quiescent galaxies.
So how do you separate them? Only because of the AGN BP diagram, you will separate them, and then you say quiescent on what basis then?
On the basis of the star formation rate. So I
Okay,
think
only so then it's active versus passive. Then all these things goes into play.
probably you're confused is because in the low redshift universe,
Uh,
we have a lot more information, such as we can resolve the AGN and all. But
Yeah.
in the high redshift universe, the way quiescent galaxies are classified are either by two methods. One is called the UVJ diagram, which is basically color diagram, rest frame UV and VJ. And the another is by using SED fitting and looking at the star formation rate. So I used, because I was able to do the SED fitting, because I don't have to rely just on colors, because I have the HSC and the GWC data. So I used that to find the quiescent galaxies. Now, if we also have the spectra, which I did in this particular case, which we usually don't, then we look at the spectra to confirm whether our prediction is quiescent or not. So now when we look at the spectra, if we see prominent features like Lymanbreak and highly absorption lines and all, and we do not see star formation lines, and we are able to confirm that the H alpha is due to star formation and not due to AGN and not due to star formation, then we confirm it as a quiescent galaxy. Okay. So that is how the process is done. But what you raise is an interesting question, because there do exist some objects which we are not sure if those objects are like AGN or star forming or quiescent or all. And those are actually called little red dots. They are also very famous in the JWST field. But these objects are not that. These are very confirmed, and not only by me. You can also look at Baker et al. And some other, like I think Alberts et al., which are two other Jade's paper, and they also confirm these galaxies independently.
Okay.
So.
Okay.
So this is the first quiescent galaxy and its density map. And I have also shown the filaments here. And so you can already see from the JWST image that it has a neighboring companion, which is kind of merging with it. And this could be affecting because it is in such a crowded area. It has a neighbor only at 6 kiloparsec. And also we can see the star formation history. The radius is the effective radius of this galaxy, which is an important parameter to note, because compared to other quiescent galaxies which are discovered at high redshift, this seems to be quite extended. So 1.31 kiloparsec is quite extended when compared with other quiescent galaxies which were discovered at similar redshift. As I will show even in my sample, this is the most extended quiescent galaxy. And it is also lying in the most overdense region, and it has a quenching time scale of 400 megayears. Now, the next galaxy, which is also in an overdense region, has very similar properties, similar quenching time scale, similar peak star formation history. And similarly, it is also very extended, but not as extended as the previous one, but still very extended, greater than 0.5 kiloparsec. So this is something interesting to note that is an important result of my study, that for the first time we saw that the morphology of any kind of galaxies, but in this case, quiescent galaxy is varying with the environment. Now, the next four galaxies are all lying in underdense region. As you can see already with your eyes, that the galaxy is having a different kind of star formation history, which is more extended and less peak. And you can see the radius of it is much decreased, less than 0.5. It's only 0.22 kiloparsecs. So it's much more compact, much more red, and has a very different star formation history. And similarly, the rest three also, they have a very compact nature, and the rest three have all the same quenching time scale. The previous one had a longer quenching time scale, but all of them are lying below 0.5 kiloparsec. So this, for the first time, I was able to confirm that morphology of quiescent galaxies in highly dense and lower dense environment are totally different from each other. And so with this, I come to the conclusion of my result. So the important conclusions of my result was that firstly, there is no strong correlation between the environment and the presence of quiescent galaxies. This doesn't mean that they're not being affected by environment. This just means that there is no star formation rate density relation which exists. Second thing, there was no correlation with the filamentary structure that I found. And finally, there is a possible correlation, because this is a small sample, between morphology and environment. So in order to confirm this morphology environment relation, we need to do a bigger study. And so what we propose is that the environment which is highly dense compared to the environment which is underdense have probably different pathways which both work at equal importance at the high redshift universe. In the underdense environment, similar to what the magneticum simulation predicted, the galaxies could be going environmental starvation, while the overdense galaxies could be interacting with each other, as which is proposed by the illustrious TNG simulation, and could be quenching because of that. And so we probably need multiple pathways to understand these highly elusive quiescent galaxies, unlike what we see in the local universe, where we have kind of similar pathways for similar kind of galaxies. And so finally, I want to end with what I'm currently doing. So now I am trying to understand Lymanà alpha emitters, which I used as traces of large-scale structure in my first study, if they are indeed a good structure. So for that, I'm measuring their clustering using simulations and observations, and an example of my ongoing work is also shown here. Second, I'm going to measure outflows and feedback in high redshift galaxies with JWST using jade, spheres, rubies, and other data. And finally, I'm a part of the ALMA-CHAMPS collaboration, which is the largest ALMA survey till date in the cosmos field. It's 0.18 square degree. It's also the deepest survey. I am going to look at the sub-millimeter and dusty star-forming galaxies with respect to the cosmic web at high redshift. So I'm going to end here. Thank you for listening.
Questions? I have one query. You said, no, like this 24 galaxies, the number came in your thing. So how do you reach to?
Yeah, 24.
Oh, yeah. How do you reach this number? And like, compared to previous observations, where JWST helps in your research?
Yeah, so I can show you a plot for that. So I found these quiescent galaxies by using a very strict star formation rate criteria on my SED fitting. And then I also visually inspected each and every SED just to make sure there are no contaminants, and I removed some of the contaminants. So it was a long process with which I reached to 24 galaxies. And here in the red line is shown what is the number density that I got. And with JWST are the, for example, this Carnal 2023 is JWST, and this one is also JWST. So I am coming like exactly at JWST. So these results are matching JWST, and for this particular study, my first one, JWST wouldn't have helped much, because firstly, it's a photometric study. Secondly, it focused on massive quiescent galaxy with masses greater than 10 to the power 10.6. So the Spitzer sample was already complete, Spitzer and Vista samples. However, for my next study, JWST helped in two ways. Firstly, I was able to confirm them spectroscopically because spectra from the ground from VLT and KEC is not enough to confirm them, even with like 24 hours exposure time. And secondly, I was able to go to much lower masses as you can see here, the mass is going up to 10 to the power 10 instead of 10 to the power 10.6. And in fact, some other JWST studies which focused on low mass quieting galaxies has even found candidates of 10 to the power 9.5. So we are able to go to lower masses.
I have another query, like you try to correlate your quenching with different parameters, and more or less you didn't find a correlation in most of the cases. So theoretically, is there any relation exist? Like you expect what triggers the quenching, or
So there is not a lot of theoretical studies, but there are like some studies using Illustris and magneticum simulations. So they are all kind of contradicting each other. For example, this is one theoretical result of the magneticum simulation. And in this, they predicted that the quiescent galaxy, like the quenching fraction, should have like an anti-correlation with the environment density. That means at high density, there will be less quench fraction and the quench fraction will increase at under.
so
And
quench means lower star formation rate? Is
yes,
that
quench means star formation rate is non-existent.
non-existent?
There is no, like for example, elliptical galaxies in the local universe.
Okay.
So quench means the star formation rate is basically equal to zero for practical purposes. And so, for example, this magneticum predicts that the star formation rate and the environmental density is anti-correlated. But there is another study, which is a theoretical study using Illustris TNG simulation, which predicts the opposite of it. And that's because the different simulation are also using different characterization of AGN feedback. And the reason for that is that before JWST and like even with ALMA and all, we are not till now sure what is the kind of outflows that exist in these galaxies. And they are now only we are trying to understand it after JWST, that what kind of AGN prescription we can use.
Okay.
So the simulation are not fully calibrated till now.
I have a last query. Like you have shown redshift like 2 to 4 or something like that.
3 to 5.
3 to 5. So what is the reason? JWST can't see beyond 5 these galaxies, or?
So JWST has found one or two galaxies at redshift 7, quiescent galaxies. So there are a few things. One is that if they are above redshift 5, they become very faint. So these I only consider the spectroscopically confirmed ones. So at least in the Jade good south sample, I couldn't find anything above redshift 5. But maybe there might exist. And maybe photometrically I found them and we can follow up. Now, another reason is that as the redshift increases, the number density decreases. So the number density which I showed before was at redshift 3, 6. But I don't really have a plot of like 3 to 5, how it decreases, but number density increases very exponentially decreases. So they become more and more rare. So just 3 to 5, like I was looking at greater than 3. But 3 to 5, it occurred because of these two reasons, that because of their faintness, and these are only the spectroscopic sources which are considered. Photometrically, I'm sure there will be many, many more sources because the number density is low, but it's still not that low. And they are very rare objects.
Okay.
One thing that we have answered them also, like about agents itself, like we know that the outflows will be different. Like how different it will be, people are studying. But do you have any, like, can you just give how it can be distinguished between the one which are in the local universe and other, like other further universe? But what I mean is that because the star formation is not there, outflow will be different, and how we will be, like, how will be distinguishing that?
You ask how we distinguish AGN or how we distinguish quiescent galaxies?
The outflows itself, like, because the outflows will be different, right, for both of them. So how you're saying that, because they will have the outflows, given that they have less star formation rate. So how different that outflow is from the one which we see in the local universe?
So yeah, that is an interesting question. So firstly, the outflow is not necessarily due to stellar feedback, could be due to AGN feedback also. The outflow will depend a lot also on, first of all, the black hole mass, which like many studies are finding that there are very overmassive black holes. Then second thing is that how they will be different is that there are different modes, like there is the jet mode, there is a like radio mode. Now, I'm not really an expert on AGN, but I kind of know what are the different modes. So we don't really know which mode is how much common. So like people are studying there, and especially for if we talk about quiescent galaxies, since they are much more fainter than star forming galaxies, as I said, these galaxies are of magnitude 24, 25. There are like 2 or 3 studies which detected outflows with smoking gun evidence at above redshift 2, and we are still kind of studying that what are the kind of, are they neutral outflows, are they ionized outflows, what is the metallicity of the outflows, are these outflows driven by stellar winds or by AGN. So this is kind of like an interdisciplinary field where like we need people both from AGN and quiescent galaxy working. So it's kind of like don't really know right now, but I especially don't know. But this is kind of an active field there.
When you plot these galaxies on like color versus stellar mass, you have like 3 categories for active, passive, and green valley. So where do these lie in that?
You mean this one?
Yeah, the quiescent galaxies that you have worked on, those samples.
So I should have probably explained this better, but the color is actually the quenching time scale. So group 1 is the one which is quenched between 0 to 200 megayear. Group 2 is between 200 to 500, and group 3 is 500 to 1 gigayear. The reason I divided into this is because, as I mentioned earlier, that quenching time scale can be used as a diagnostic tool to understand which were the dominant process quenching them. For example, for RAM pressure stripping, in the local universe, we have observed it acts on the time scale of 200 to 400 megayear. So that's why I did. So as you can see from the figure, both for the cosmos sources and the gauge sources, the galaxies are lying in all the groups. And even if I look at just one group, there is no like correlation either with mass or with density. So either our sample is still too small or there exists really no correlation. So that is.
Thank you.
So, do you have the systemic redshift of the QGs that you have?
Yeah, so I have the systemic redshift of the QGs which were in the jades. I don't have the ones for the Cosmos because JWST data has still not been observed, and like the Cosmos 3D has been observed and is still not fully observed. And then there is another survey, I think is, I don't remember its name, but I did have access to that one survey. But for the jades, I do have the systemic. So all the redshift which I mentioned here, they all are systemic.
Any more questions? If not, let's thanks again the speaker.